I like to reread certain books at least once a year. This way I can measure the level of my evolution against those books. And of course, it's not all books I like to read, but certain books that affected me the most and has certain wisdom that I'm thriving to understand. And to be able to understand those books' wisdom, it takes years. Often it takes life. And every year, when I become older, these books affect me quite differently. And one of those books, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, or Dostoevsky's works. And what happened is, it seems like these books help me to continue my continuity of my understanding of the world and myself. Because when you measure yourself against great works, the way how you understand the world and how you understand those books, and then you try to combine this understanding into one picture that helps you to find answers on the problems that bothers you about this world. Because the books, in some sense, it's the file of continuity. It's what people experienced before, and those experiences were so important that it still affects people now, even after 100 or 200 years. And you take this experience from other people, and then you try to adapt this experience to yourself, and you try to understand how wise you're becoming by understanding that experience. And what's interesting is you can measure your own deepness while keeping reading those books. Because when I read that book, for example, 5 years ago, I felt differently about the book and about the idea of that book. And when I read it now, for example, I suddenly discover moments I totally missed. And this understanding gives me discovery of my own self, of the new angles in my own personality I had no idea about. That's what great books do to you. That's what sophisticated literature does. It helps you to discover new compartments inside of your own personality. Something, you can actually awaken something within you that was slumbering for your entire life. And that's why sophisticated literature is incredibly important to read and read and read again. Like, for example, if you take Dostoevsky's, one of my favorite books, Crime and Punishment, or The Underground Man, or Demons, or The Idiot, or Brothers Karamazov's. All those works help me to reconsider my own view on the world through the view of those people, of those characters I look with their eyes. Because books, great books in some sense, gives you opportunity to look through other people's eyes, through the fictional characters' eyes on the fictional world. And then you suddenly realize that this fictional world frighteningly looks like real world around you. Because real literature, real sophisticated literature, it shows the world through emotions, through intelligence, through struggle, and we always struggle. It doesn't matter 100 years ago or right now or after 100 years. If there's still humanity will struggle the same way, just using different gadget to numb themselves. And here it comes to addictions. And that's what the problem, because addictions, if you compare addictions to real great literature, helps you to numb yourself, and therefore you have this illusion, or you under illusion, that your time stops, that you don't age. And that's the delusion, because addictions are the same, but you keep aging without noticing you're aging. And the scary thing is, as the result of those addictions, you don't discover your own deepness. And without discovering your own deepness, you stay the same and therefore you never change in the right way, but only biologically, that you keep dying day after day. That's why it's so dangerous about addictions, because addictions give you that illusion to you. For example, people who drink alcohol, they still enjoy the same alcohol or the same cigarettes or video games or pornography or drugs. And the problem is, it doesn't give them deepness, it's distract them from their own life. It makes their life more irrelevant, because what you do, you live from one urge to another, and you measure your life with those urges, and you subjugate yourself to those urges. And when you do that, you think that you never age, because the addictions give you this illusion of not aging. But it's not true. Think how horrible it is when you're 80 years old and you still play video games. You still thinking that you have the same idea of video games as you had 40, 50, 60 years ago. You don't discover deepness. You just keep squandering your life away. And we live only once. And I'm not against video games, but there are certain things that we hiding behind. And we hiding behind for a reason. We're hiding behind because we cannot face it, or we don't have enough courage to face life and to try to change ourselves, to find the deepness within us. Because all lies of the world start with our own self. You don't lie to others out of the blue. The lie to others start with a lie to your own self. Because once you start lying to yourself about yourself and about your goals and about your ambitions and about everything around you, then you try to propagate these lies upon others, because that's what your world is. Because if your internal world is a lie, your external world becomes lie as well. And then you just follow your feelings, and of course the facts of reality goes against those feelings, and since those facts go against those feelings, you start feeling resentfulness against the world, because the world doesn't recognize your lies as reality. And that's why you spend in your lifetime to numb yourself with addictions, because this numbness gives you perception of the world through the muddy lens, and you don't see things clearly. And whatever you don't see clearly, you use your fantasies to create silhouette that's not there. It's like when you're drunk, you perceive the world quite differently than when you're sober or when you're on drugs, because this numbness helps you to manage your lies within and without yourself. And that's why sophisticated literature is really important, because those books helps you to understand yourself through those books. It helps you to measure your own deepness that you have to measure, otherwise you cannot age properly. The entire idea of proper aging is this ability to become more soul than the body. Because if you steal more body than your soul when you're getting old, it means your life becomes miserable, since your body is failing you, your biology is dying. And if you have so much, if you really concentrate on your biology only and disregard your soul, then you become pathetic. That's the problem, because if you become more soul than your body when you get older, that's where you discover new deepness within yourself and wisdom and new idea of existence. And then you're afraid less of dying, since you're more soul than biology, and your soul or your consciousness will never die. It's just stop existing within this shell that you call your body. And I think that's what evolution of life is. That's why when we're teenagers, we're incredibly physical, because our body's in its prime, and they want procreation, they want to do something mad because we're full of hormones. But when you get older, we need to discover wisdom within ourselves, and to be able to discover wisdom within ourselves, we have to read books filled with that wisdom, because to understand, to be able to vocalize this wisdom to ourselves and then to the world. We lie because we're afraid to discover wisdom. We lie to ourselves because we try to simplify everything around us and about us. And I think, like I heard somewhere, people who cynical, they're really not smart people. Because if you're cynical, you reduce world to something very bad, and something that you don't understand and don't even try to understand, because you're only cynical if you refuse to understand the world. Because it's easy and simple this way, just refuse to understand what's happening around you. But when you're filled with wonder, when you're curious about the world, and notice this thing that you're curious about the world on the different stages of your life, because when you're younger, you're curious about different things, and when you get older, you're getting curious about other things, and when you get much more older, your curiosity is still there, but on a different level. But you have to go through those levels step by step. That's why when you age and you lose your curiosity completely, you become just aging animal that useless for everything, even for himself. And that's the problem, because you have to preserve your curiosity. But when you get older, your curiosity doesn't have naivety anymore. And of course, you shouldn't have cynicism, because if you notice cynicism about yourself and the world, it means you refuse to understand something. Because to be able to understand something, you have to work hard. You have to try to understand this world through understanding yourself. And while you're still alive, you have to keep understanding yourself. That's what I never understood. How come people can be bored with themselves? Because the entire world you can only see through yourself. And if you understand yourself well, then the understanding of the world becomes much more clear. And if you understand yourself, you suddenly discover some different layers within yourself, because we are the world of its own. And I don't know how you can be bored with yourself, and I don't know how you can stop being curious, because you have to preserve, in some sense, this child within you, because this child within you is always open to the wonders of the world. Because without world wonders, without this curiosity, I don't know what's the point of life in the first place. Just drown yourself in addiction, numb yourself, and then just die without even realizing what death is. Sometimes I'm thinking about my own death. And what I try to practice, this idea that I'm curious to experience my own death. I'm just curious to see what would happen when I'm dying. If I die from old ages, I just want to be aware of my final moments. And I want to treat those final moments as the journey to somewhere else, as the next stage of my evolution. And if there's nothingness, it doesn't matter. Nothingness is destination as well. And I'm always curious what kind of music I want to listen during my final hour, or what kind of movie I want to watch during my final hour, or what kind of book I would like to read, or ask somebody to read me the book. That's my point, because I want to see life, and I want to practice to see my life as an adventure that I'm curious, that I'm exploring with curiosity, and try to learn as much as I can while I'm alive. Because I think the point of our life, since we're conscious human beings, to be aware of ourselves and the world till last moment of our life.